Well, this episode is going to be talking about what's going on at the Republican Party. But to say that the Republicans are mirroring what's going on in the Conservative Party is a bit yes and no in some respects. Yes, of course, we've got the crazies. But look at Liz Truss. After she lost her seat, you don't see anyone trying to welcome her back into the party. You see her being very, very much almost pushed off into the political wilderness, which is where, traditionally such characters like her do indeed belong. And in this, the recent Republican RNC convention, you almost see that entire Wild West almost of where there used to be sort of, it was there, but it was tamed, shall we say, and managed. Now has almost in an effective way become the law and order of the party. And I generally do have to ask, and I would be very, very interested if there are I think people have recommended people in the past, but I would love to reach out to any Republicans out there who look at their party, see what has gone on this weekend, and are just aghast at what's gone on, because I would love to talk to someone in that position, because obviously I'm from the UK. It's very strange sort of, looking out from an outside perspective on this, but I would love to speak to someone who has, that inside perspective, who's seen, a member of the Republican Party just see what is going on. So I know people in the past have recommended other people, but please do so down below again, because I do want to reach out to these people, because I'd love to have just a conversation with someone, just to really find out what is going on and really ask the question, honestly, is there a way back from this? Like, is there a way back? Or has the Republican Party changed so much that in a very sort of significant way that there almost is no way back? Or if there is, what is it? I would love to speak to someone just on that topic and subject. So if you know anyone or anything like that, do let me know in the comments down below. Like I say, would love to speak to them, would love to talk to them on that. So as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. Like I say, do remember to click on the like and the share button. And of course, down below, there's the Patreon page. There's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this, because this honestly shows you the change of the Republican Party from many of its traditional stances of where they were to gone way out there in many respects. But oh boy, I said it at the beginning, honestly, I do not see how there is a way back. Like, after this, I generally do not see how there is a way back, or how you get rid of these elements that have so infected the Republican Party to maybe bring about some normalcy and some almost sense in a way. But there you go. So anyway, let's get on to this. This is the Politico having a look at what has been happening at the RNC, and just listening to what some of the stuff has been said, it is insane. Some of the stuff that's been said on here, but it's really worrying on a number of other key regards. So a new kind of Republican Party is now forming at the RNC. And oh boy, is it. If you saw, what is it, Emily Maddow's interview with the, I can't remember who she was interviewing, but my word, that will go down in the annals of like journalism history. But oh my word, yeah, definitely an interview worth watching. But anyway, on to this. So a new kind of Republican Party is now revealing itself at this national convention. All the markers of the MAGA jamboree are now on display. from the hulking Donald Trump iconography outside the convention hall to rhinestone Trump cowboy hats and red Trump Vance placards. But a closer look, and the party is changing. It is now increasingly embracing economic populism at home and isolation abroad, shifting from decades-long positions on abortion, and only now very leery, if not hostile, to even certain business interests. And that just goes to show you the huge policy changes on this. Um, I think if Donald Trump wins, and again, I still think it's an if, but hey, November's a long time to hold your breath. Yeah. Um, I think Ukraine is going to be a cause a split, because if the Republicans really start, as you'll see in a moment, openly talking about abandoning Ukraine and actually doing that, there's a lot of other Republicans who are like, whoa, we can't do this. Like, what are you doing? You know, when you've got people like oh, Ted Cruz, who were trying to remind Republicans, hey, they signed an agreement. If we give up our nuclear weapons, we want security guarantees from you, having to remind them about their obligations of a security treaty that they signed. You know, there is a lot, I think, to be worried, certainly about, this type of party that's really taking power. Really a lot to be worried about this. But back to this. So Trump's, of course, newly appointed running mate, J.D. Vance from Ohio, they said that the GOP is now in a late Republican period, and the party needs to get pretty wild and pretty far out there. Yeah, totally not not a worrying talking point. Oh yeah, the party needs to get pretty wild. Yeah. Oh, I if I were in America, I'd be very, very worried. I'd be very, very worried, honestly. Um, but and of course, this is exactly now what is unfolding in Milwaukee. It is not just Trump's selection of Vance. It is the opposition of the Ukraine aid, who once said, "I really don't care what happens to Ukraine, one way or another." Again, very worrying indeed. It is also the party's adoption of now a very slimmed down abortion platform, and the criticisms of corporations is now heard on the RNC floor. And remember, JD Vance ran, I think, when he was for senator on like a complete abortion ban. That's now been scrubbed from his website. Um, make no mistake, if Donald Trump gets in, they will do for it. They will go for that. They will absolutely go for that. They want a complete abortion ban. If they have the power to do so, they will do one. And this is why I really think they need to be making a big fuss about this. I've said this before. The Democrats need to be making a huge fuss about abortion, Supreme Court, many things that Republicans sort of want and would do. They need to keep pushing that fact and just remind people what would happen if these people get into power. If you thought the last couple of years of the last 4 years, shall we say, of Donald Trump's administration were bad, oh boy, oh boy, it is going to have big repercussions around the world. Big repercussions, very big. So, back to this. So, this is now, of course, a result of the confluence of economic, demographic, and of course, cultural changes, including the newly ascendant labor movement, which the GOP now finds itself increasingly attached to, at least nominally. Together, those forces have only now accelerated the GOP's flirtation with a revolution of the party. And that is so surprising that these labor movements have actually joined with the GOP. Because if you look at Project 2025, they don't want these types of labor movements to exist. They do not believe in those labor movements. So that's going to be very interesting if they do win, and then all of a sudden they're now throwing these labor movements who support them under the bus. That's going to be insane on that one. But back to this. So I think what we're witnessing now is the full-on frontal assault of conservatism, said Mark Short, who is the chief staff to Vice President Mike Pence from 2019 to 2021, who was so estranged from this new version of the party that he was advised to skip the convention. Imagine that. Someone who was the chief of staff for the previous vice president being told, do not attend this convention. That to me is insane, that you would have to openly say someone like that, who is part of like the previous administration, say what you like on that. It's shocking that they would be told, do not go to this, because they are so estranged from this. And bear in mind, during the the competition, Nikki Haley was their one hope, and even she has now bent the knee. And honestly, what happens in November? God, I hope that he doesn't win. I really hope he doesn't win. And I hope it is not close either, because Trump will absolutely cause some problems on that front. Absolutely cause some problems on that front. They have been ready to go. So if this is a close vote or anything like that, get ready. So back to it. And of course, you can look at this, looking at the platform, walking away from all the issues like life and traditional marriage, embracing tariffs across the board. I feel like yesterday and last night, we went a step further when you have speakers who are basically saying that NATO was at fault for Putin's invasion of Ukraine and referring to job creators as corporate pigs and denouncing national right to work. Yeah, totally not worrying at all where they are openly saying that at all, is it? Especially the NATO stuff. That is, yeah. Hmm. So he said, this now is now an enormous departure from where our party had been, and I do not think it is the prescription for success. Perhaps the most shocking scene for the most traditional Republicans was the very fiery speech from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters President Sean O'Brien, the very first Teamster to speak at an RNC in over its 121-year history. In his remarks, he trespassed on the traditional economic conservatism, decrying the corporate elite, outlining the harm of right to work laws, and which have now made it harder to organize and have been passed mostly in GOP run states. And he called the Chamber of Commerce unions for big businesses. And that's a fair point. These right to work laws, mostly in GOP run states, you know. And like I say, in Project 2025, guys like this, unions, as far as they're concerned, should just not exist and be non-existent. And yet here he is speaking in this way to people who would gladly just go, vroom, straight under the bus. Anyway, Dave Urban, the former 2016 Trump campaign advisor, said to Politico, as he looked at his CNN host David Adelaide and the former Barack Obama advisor, and asked him off air, "Am I at the right convention?" O'Brien's remarks left some watching in the hall and from afar nearly physically uncomfortable, even when they slowly began to embrace a new brand of a Republican-based voter. I was starting to squirm a little bit on some of the stuff, but I didn't know how you blend that. And that's what makes up my support, said Senator Mike Bourne of Indiana, who is running for governor and is one of the wealthiest members of Congress. And that doesn't mean you take the most outrageous stuff that he might have said, but you also don't dismiss some of the rest of it, and you find a new coalition. Well, here's the thing: as the UK found out itself very recently, coalitions from such radical opposing sides do not tend to last long, because sooner or later you've got to give one side something or other. You've got to start coming down, and that's when these coalitions start to break apart. Just as we saw between the blue and the red wall, the you know the quote the Brexit coalition that fell apart very, very quickly, as we saw at this election. As we saw, remember, our Conservatives last election were like, oh my god, this is a new decade of conservatism. We're going to be in power for like 3 or 4 decades. It's going to be like 2040 by the next time we lose. And yet, here we are with one of the biggest Conservative defeats ever just a few weeks ago. So, yeah, be careful what you wish for about these such, bizarre coalitions, because sooner or later they will come asking for stuff. And if you don't give them what they want, well, they will break apart very, very, very quickly. So, or as Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio put it, I think President Trump has made our party what it always should have been, which is a populist party rooted in conservative principles. And populism and conservatism don't traditionally tend to go all that too well together, but there you go. And bear in mind, there are, of course, popular conservatives. There is a whole thing about it. But when you are sort of almost smushing, as we've seen this morphing from this, just from some of this stuff just morphing together, how long can that coalition hold? How long will it, be hold together? And especially, let's say, if they go on to lose this election, which I hope they do, what happens then? What happens to this massive coalition that thinks it can win, that thinks it can do this? What then happens if it goes on to have loss after loss after loss? Do they accept those losses? Because that's not what those people are saying, that they will accept those losses. So for years, the GOP has been undergoing a sea change as a working class party, all revolving around the organizing principles of America First. At times during his presidency, Trump reverted to more traditionalist GOP ideology, and on issues including tax cuts, which he cut back in 2017. But it was a selection of Vance that could now ultimately cement the party's trajectory towards a different point on the horizon. And this is what Vance's selection has been, as we did the video just time when he was shortly announced. That will now push Donald Trump in very, very much so in this direction. Very, very much so in this direction. Pence was almost a traditionalist Republican, moderating sometimes, maybe, Trump's worst instincts. But Vance is going to feed into him. He's going to egg on and build up Trump's worst instincts. Like I say, these two guys in the White House are going to cause a lot of trouble worldwide on that. That you can guarantee. So back to this. Vance was easily the most distinctive choice he could have made, in part to send a signal. I think the coverage has rightly captured on what we are certainly hearing, which is what the business community and Wall Street and so forth are now very deeply dismayed and concerned, as they should be. Said Orrin Cass, a former economic advisor to Mitt Romney's 2008 and 2012 presidential campaign. And a very close association of Vance, who spoke with him last week. In the coming years, Cass, the founder of the conservative think tank American Compass, a group aimed at trying to develop a new center-right consensus on policy, predicted that a multi-ethnic working-class conservatism as a foundation for an annual Republican Party that could achieve a durable governing majority. In Milwaukee, there have now been vestiges of the old party in view too. Nikki Haley, who championed the Reagan-esque policy agenda during her presidential campaign, received a smattering of boos as she strode on stage to speak Tuesday night, even as Trump himself applauded, saying, "We must not only be a unified party, we must also expand our party," Haley said. We have so much to do when we are better and bigger. We are stronger than when we welcome people into our party and when we have different backgrounds and experience. Uh, Governor Ron DeSantis, who also ran to Trump's right in the primary, also received boos. Uh, Again, both people who desperately now want jobs if Trump gets in this new administration. They are going to go from being very anti-Trump to being like, hey, this is how we want jobs now. We're bending the knee. We're kissing the ring. Please give us jobs. Um, So back to this. So Ron DeSantis received boos. The reaction to both Haley and DeSantis did show that even both candidates who critiqued Trump from very different vantage points on policy, it is Trump's personality, not his politics, that most endears him to the base. And Trump and his allies are now coaxing the Republican Party away from the old orthodoxy even more than during his first term, at least quite literally on paper. The new GOP platform is the best example of this. The platform is now missing any mention of marriage between one man and one woman, a long-time staple of the party principles. Instead, it talks about promoting a culture that values the sanctity of marriage and the foundational role of families in what has largely been hailed a victory for pro-LGBTQ plus Republicans, but a blow to the party's social conservative wing. I would not hail that as a victory. I would not hail that as a victory because when you are saying there a culture that values the sanctity of marriage, that to me doesn't sound you know very LGBTQ plus friendly. And you've got to remember, was it just a few years ago where you had that video that came out of the Texas sort of Republican, where they were changing their constitution and they were removing a lot of the pro friendly gay language, and this guy was like outraged, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? I can't believe you are doing this. This is everything that I keep on saying, Republicans aren't. You are now doing this. I don't think it's going to turn out to be the way that they want, you know, because they do have it out completely for the LGBTQ community. That is of no doubt in my mind. They are out for that. It may sound, oh, good for now, but once they get in power, I have a feeling they're going to sort of abandon that and focus on the sanctity of marriage and what does that actually mean to them. Like I say, that is open up to a lot of, shall we say, it's all of a sudden they could say, oh, well, the sanctity of marriage is between one man and a woman. So be careful, guys. Be careful what you wish for on that. So, this is the British Tory platform, said Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. This is not a conservative platform. Trump is now aiming right down the middle. And not anymore. On this, might have been maybe a long time ago, but who knows what the British Tory platform currently is going to be in a couple of weeks. Of course, we passed. Well, David Cameron obviously passed. The Marriage Equality Act, but you've got to remember the culture wars have never ever successfully been imported from America. They've never worked. They've never really taken off in any mass significant way as you have seen in America. Will they work on this time going for this? Who knows? And then, of course, there's the matter of abortion. A contingent of anti-abortion delegates, even citing the need to come together in the wake of assassination attempt on Trump, now dropped their fight against the changes to the party platform when they argued that backtracks on decades of GOP progress now on the issue. The most anti-abortion organizations have now lined up behind this platform, largely because it mentions the 14th Amendment, which the conservatives have long argued protects life beginning at conception. Still, the document reflects Trump's leave abortion to the states approach in the post-Roe era, a position that leaves abortion now broadly accessible in many states. And that is, I think, what their idea is now. We've seen this. coming after, states in we've had, referendums on abortion. Bear in mind, these states where we have seen victories where they have managed to keep abortion, don't think that's the end of the story in those states, because slowly over time they will try to start erode these things. They will do everything they can to start winding these things back, getting rid of Roe. If you listen to a lot of these um abortion activists, they are all about, getting rid of Roe was the first step. It was the first step in a long journey to have a complete abortion ban. And they are now going after the states in all they can. And trust me, if Vance gets in with Trump and they could pass an abortion ban, oh boy, they will. Like, do not get me wrong, they absolutely will on that. Delegates to the convention also now largely very much embracing the former president's view. Kip Kiddleston, a delegate from Minnesota who sat on the platform committee, described himself as, quote, pro-life, but acknowledges that that is not the position of his state, where abortion is now legal until a fetus is viable. He said this platform is a platform that is responsive and supportive of where America is actually at and where states like Minnesota are actually at. That's all it is, Croston said. Yeah, currently states where they are at. Bear in mind, this guy would absolutely want to be pushing that off. Like, they want to move the needle in Minnesota. They aren't happy with the fact that abortion is there. Oh, it's just, trust me, once they get in, they will absolutely, take away any and all abortion rights. They have been very, very open for a long time on that stance, on that platform, what they would do. Um, you know, as the saying goes, give them an inch and they'll take a mile. And trust me, that inch to take a mile is the White House. And then even worse, it could be full control, maybe of I can't remember is it the House or the Senate. Um, I'm sure you'll forgive me for my ignorance on that. Like I say, I'm from the UK. I'm not exactly most brushed up when it comes to sort of American political inner workings, but there is a chance, of course, that maybe during this election Trump does indeed take the House, because there are down ballot votes going on during this presidential election as well. If they take control, oh, they will go for a statewide abortion ban. Forget all this. Oh, we're just a big tent party. No, it's just where America's at. Don't think so. They will take every opportunity they can to go after it. But that's where the Republican Party is going and shifting to this insane, viewpoint on many of these things. With you have these traditional GOP views, which you would sort of expect to see now being almost rejected wholesale, and some of them very, very uncomfortable with that sort of view, hoping that this is the new way to power. Because when they get in, they'll pretend to be populist while continuing probably with that GOP platform. Or if not, they will go full, Project 2025, which I think ultimately they will do as well. And that will do a lot of damage to America as well. Not just only in America, but over here, in the UK and the rest of Europe as well. Um, unfortunately, America is very powerful, and what happens there can sometimes ripple out and have very damaging effects, across the world, aka, the housing bubble, the banking bubble. What if Donald Trump does some weird economic shenanigans like Liz Truss did? Almost, crashing the economy in America is going to have very significant waves, certainly in the rest of the world. So, God, yeah. Is there a way back? I think Trump's going to lose. I think Trump's going to lose this election first. He's going to lose this election, and I think you've got to continuously see this MAGA movement continuously be defeated. But it's going to take some time for this to get out of their system. I do not think that this is there is a quick solution to this idea. I really do not think so. There is one. It is going to take a long time, I think, to sort of work this out, but it will involve them losing. And remember, prior to this election, there were two previous elections where the Republicans were talking about these massive red waves about to happen. Of course, those didn't happen. MAGA has been defeated at the ballot box a couple of times. And if Donald Trump gets defeated at this one, hopefully this will be a very seismic defeat. We hope. But if not, and it's a close election, then they aren't going to accept that they lost. We've seen that repeated them multiple times, and that becomes very, very worrying, because one of the most fundamental facts about democracy in itself is the peaceful transition of power. Like, if you cannot do that, if you cannot achieve that, then democracies start to run into trouble very, very quickly. And when you've got a party that still is obsessed with the idea that the 2020 election was rigged against them, what could they say about this one if Donald Trump loses? Or what do they do if they lose and it's a narrow vote? Things could go, I think, very wrong very quickly. But I am interested in speaking to someone who is a traditional Republican that is sort of horrified, I think, by this, and asking them, what can they do? How can this, is there ever any way back to some sort of sanity on this front? But there you go. We'll see what happens. But do let me know in the chat if you know anyone. Like I say, I will try and sort of reach out to them, and sort of we can maybe try and have a chat on here at some point. But of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.